Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is L'Oreal Torres. I am the Chief People Officer at Vested, and today I have the great pleasure of celebrating International Women's Day by speaking with a group of inspiring leaders within the financial services and communications industry. Today, we are going to discuss this year's theme, Choose to Challenge, and what it means to each of these amazing women in both their professional and personal lives. We will be saving the last 10 to 15 minutes to open it up for Q&A. So please submit your questions in the Q&A box so we can answer them at the end. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. I would love for you to each introduce yourself. Ishviene, why don't you start?
Thanks, L'Oreal. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Ishviene Arora, COO and co-founder at Vested. So I have over 15 years of experience working in financial services communications. So I help brands tackle communications with an integrated mindset. So that means everything from working with them to execute programs across earned, owned, and paid channels. I wear lots of different hats in my role at Vested. So from managing new business to managing client accounts to working on operations. And when I'm not contemplating world domination with my colleagues, I am taking care of my beautiful 3 children. I actually just had my 3rd child, a baby girl, a few months ago.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Binna?
Hi guys, happy International Women's Day, everyone. I'm Binna Kim. I'm the president and one of the co-founders of Vested. Like Ishviene, I'm actually also a mom of 3. We started Vested when I was 3 months pregnant with my 2nd child. So I'm always excited to talk about issues related to women and leadership and women in finance, because as a young woman starting out in this space, but also as a Wellesley grad, I'm really passionate about this particular subject. So I am very much looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you. Elspeth?
Hi, everybody. Lovely to see you this today. I'm the UK CEO of Vested, so I run our office from London. I've spent the last 2 decades working in financial services comms, and sadly, unlike Ishviene and Binna, I only have 2 children, but I spend my time chasing after them when I'm not running the business, and like Ishviene said, planning world domination as well.
Thank you so much. Elisa?
Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon now. Elisa Barsotti. I am head of communications at RBC Capital Markets in the US. I've been here at RBC for over 10 years, which is just impossible to even contemplate. Been in financial communications for also over 15 years now, which is also wild. I am a mom of 2 little ones as well, a 7-year-old and almost 5-year-old who keep me extremely busy. I live in New York City, which is really exciting and challenging at the same time, and I'm really excited for the discussion ahead. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Ashlyn?
Hi, thanks, L'Oreal. Hi, everybody. I can think of no better way to celebrate this day than being with all of you guys. It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Ashlyn. I am head of corporate marketing at Berkadia, which is a commercial real estate firm based in Ambler, Pennsylvania, where I work out of normally. Now I'm in my basement in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. But looking forward to being back in the office soon with the rest of my team. Have an awesome team of communications, marketing, and event planning professionals that I get the pleasure of working with every single day. And I'm just really excited to be here. I'm currently have been in the industry for about 15 years now. And when I'm not working, I am actually getting my MBA at Villanova University right now, and have the pleasure of also being with a lot of really awesome classmates too. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, so much for celebrating International Women's Day with us. As a reminder, if there are any Q&A that you would like to ask for the panel, please submit it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer them at the end. So we're going to jump right into some questions. Binna and Ashlyn, this question is for you. This year's theme is International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. What does that mean to you? And how do you think it relates to being a woman in the financial services industry?
That's such a great question. And I have to say, I love the theme choose to challenge. I became a mom of a young girl 3 years ago, and I have to say it's really shaped my point of view in terms of, choosing to speak up or to call things out or to comment on these things, because I realize it's not just about sort of my present that I'm impacting, but also hers, right? So the next generation of young female leaders. And what I love about choose to challenge is I think it's sort of almost like a rallying cry or almost a word of encouragement, because I have to say, I mean, as a working mom, I've got 3 kids that I'm chasing around. It is exhausting to sometimes fight the fight or choose to say something or choose to argue or choose to call something out, because at the end of the day, sometimes it feels like, is this worth it? And I think in financial services, especially, we have this, in some ways, in terms of our jobs, we have this role that we play and helping our brands think about, are we positioning things correctly? Are we communicating to our clients or even to our internal stakeholders in ways that are inclusive or equitable? And sometimes it's tiring to think about that all the time, but it's also so important. So I love Choose to Challenge because I think it's such a great word of encouragement for all the women who are out there doing this every day.
Definitely. I fully agree with that, Binna. I think I love that, because I think after a year like 2020, I'm not really sure how much more challenging it can get for all of us. I'm also a working mom. I have 2 kids, Max and Bethany. And I feel like last year I was constantly pushed to my limits in terms of keeping everything and everyone going during, a really, really difficult time for the world. My patience was challenged. My confidence was challenged at times. And I'm usually a pretty optimistic person. And I think even sometimes that was challenged for me. And I'm sure a lot of us felt like that too. I think you can look at that choose to challenge mantra a couple ways, probably. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do as a society to unite and to come together and make this world a better place to be in. That's the ultimate challenge, right? And I think that can feel really, really overwhelming sometimes, but we can start out on a smaller level by choosing to take that challenge on ourselves and take those first steps in making a difference. And whether that be educating ourselves in an area where we're admittedly less knowledgeable, or even carving out time for you, because you know that you need to be in a good place mentally to be able to do that important work and support those around you the best we can. I think that comes down to challenging yourself too, getting back on the horse after a really rocky year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, ladies. Elspeth, Elisa, this question is for you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you landed in the financial services communication space? And was it always something you wanted to do?
I love L'Oreal to be able to say, yes, it was something I always wanted to do. It was my wildest dream from when I was 5 years old. I think the reality is that I, like many, many people in this industry, fell into it and discovered it and came to love it over time. So I started out thinking I was going to be a lawyer, but I went off and studied English and philosophy. And then as I went along, I suddenly discovered that there was this crazy world called PR and communications, and suddenly realized that was way more me. And so I set my heart on that, but decided I was going to work in charity PR and absolutely save the world, which won't surprise the people who I know. And then clearly went off and did work experience and also realized that actually that wasn't so me either. And that actually what I loved was finding really crunchy subject matter and then making it meaningful and making sense of it. And I think the way that has translated as I've got older and I've got more experience is that actually the purpose bit has come back, but in a very different way, which is really understanding the role that money plays in the world and really feeling this is my role as a communicator. If I can just make a bit of a difference and help more people understand the power of finance, then I can help improve lives. So the heart bits come through all the way, but it certainly wasn't something that I planned from an early age. But it's clearly a role that I love and really enjoy and I'm very passionate about doing and believe we can do so much with it. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say very similar response from my standpoint. The short answer really is no, I did not plan for this. I studied history in school and, upon graduation, when I was trying to find something that made sense for me, just sort of fell into a comms role at a PR firm, started off doing healthcare, pharmaceutical, communications, and realized that was not quite for me. and was able to secure a role at a financial firm, Brunswick Group, and the rest is really history from there. You know, the last 12 years have really focused on financial communications, and like I said at the start, been at RBC now for 10 years. But I think financial communications has always been really exciting for me, and really challenging. Something I didn't really know anything about before. I had to learn a lot along the way. I'm still learning every day, but I think it's a great place to be.
It's amazing. It's always great when we love what we do and it challenges us daily. Binna, Ashlyn, this question is for you. What are the gender-specific challenges or barriers that you've come across during your career? What are some things you'd like to see become more normal in the workplace, and how they can support women?
Well, I could probably talk about this for the entire duration of the webinar, but I'm not going to do that because I want to make sure everybody has a chance to talk. I would say earlier on in my career, I found that how you look sometimes impacts how people treat you. And I think as a young woman, especially with financial services clients, I did think sometimes that impacted how people treat you, but also how seriously they take you, which shouldn't really even be a factor, to be honest, in meetings or in conversations. And as a young woman, that's definitely something I felt, I was challenged by coming up in my career. And then becoming a mom, I think sometimes there is this feeling that you have to choose, right? I can either choose to be someone who's ambitious in pursuing my career, or I can choose to be a mom. And I do think things have changed, but I always think there's more work to be done in terms of encouraging not only women to stay in the workplace, but that you can be a leader and also have a family, and that you shouldn't have to make sacrifices. And I will say, part of the reason why I quit to start Vested, I quit when I was 3 months pregnant, was because I felt that I wasn't being taken seriously as a leader because I had chosen to have another child. And I never think that should be the case. I never think that should impact your future or your career. And it doesn't take, like, just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I'm no longer effective at my job, or just because I'm a mom doesn't mean I'm no longer an effective leader. And I think it's really important that we continue to encourage women into leadership positions and to be executives and to feel like they can still have families. And also that accommodation is happening at work. I'm sure a lot of the moms who are probably listening to this feel this way, but I've been to so many like day-long meetings where I've had to go, I need to run and take a pumping break at some point. And in not feeling awkward or feeling like I have to be apologetic for that, but actually this is part of my need. And so I think the more we as employers, or even, people who are running into other, women in the workplace, I think the more we can encourage that, the more we can continue to affect change for the next generation of women and moms to come.
Absolutely. I fully support that idea 100%, and think that we all really need to get to a place. I think for me as a woman anyway, I kind of always have this need to be seen as, I can handle it. I can do it all. I can do all of this. Like you said, Binna, I never want to have to choose, and I never want anybody to look at me and think, oh God, she's really falling apart at the seams, or she might need some help. I think if there's one thing I learned in this last year, it's that it's really okay to not be okay. And we all have to get really comfortable with that idea. When you're not okay, ask for help. Like it's fine. And I don't know why we live in this world. I think right now there's this new trend of like this toxic positivity that makes us all think we live in some kind of sitcom where everything is wonderful and beautiful and perfect all the time. I think certainly social media doesn't help, because the truth is we're not okay all the time. And we really have to, do that hard work, I think, for women that are coming up in this industry, to end that facade. Because I tell my team all the time, I don't care if you mess up, and I don't care if you're not going to meet a deadline, but speak up so I can help you. I want to be able to help. And that's okay to be able to say that. And by the way, I realize that I'm saying that from a place of privilege, because I am fortunate enough and lucky enough to be able to work at a company with a team that supports me. Not everybody has that level of safety. It's a luxury that not everyone has. So it's much more difficult, I recognize, to be vulnerable in those situations, and to ask for help. But I think if we can start by maybe normalizing supporting one another and being a cheerleader for each other, and giving that help when someone asks it, instead of, doubting or saying, oh, we only have this going on, you need this too. Help each other. I think it would really make a huge difference.
So great. Yeah, I think I'm very fortunate to work at a place like that as well. So Elisa, Ishviene, can you tell me about a woman in your life who has inspired or impacted your career, and what piece of advice would you give a young woman entering the workforce?
Sure. Yeah. I love this question. I think I'd have to choose two women. There's been many who've really impacted and inspired me, and I view as a mentor. But if I were to choose two, the first would be my manager at Brunswick Group when I was really first starting off in communications, and quite frankly knew little to nothing. She really believed in me. She took me under her wing. She inspired me to be where I'm at today, and believed in my potential. And that was, she's a really important person, in my life. And then I would say the second would be my current boss. And if she's on, hello. She has been my manager for a number of years. We've worked together the entire time I've been at RBC. So over a decade now. She is a confidant, a friend, a colleague, a support system to me, also a mom of two little ones, extremely successful, someone I look up to, and really inspires me and our team on a daily basis. So thank you, Sanam. And my advice for someone starting off, there's, we could probably have a whole session on that, but I would say a couple things, just having confidence, and not trying to be one of the boys, in financial services. Most of the people that we work with every day are, quite frankly, white men. I think it's easy to try to emulate their style of working and try to be like them. And I think it's really important for us to embrace, who we are as women. I think many women have extremely high EQs. That maybe, are higher than our male counterparts. And I think we can use that to our advantage, and, could really help accelerate your career. And I think, further to that, just now more than ever, a lot of organizations are, embracing this diversity of thought. And I think we as women can bring that to the table in a different way, balance the weight, so to speak, of what the industry has been in the past. And I feel extremely lucky to be at RBC. We have a very, very strong corporate culture that really embraces D&I, and we've got very active employee resource groups that are devoted to women, and also one that we just established that I'm on the leadership team on, which is our family, which is devoted to really all parents, working parents, but especially working moms, like the folks on this panel. And I would say, find that in your organization. If there's not one, start one, and be part of that positive change in your organization, and you can really, become a leader that way.
That's so great, Elisa. This is such a tough question. So honestly, I think I can't point to one person. I would say there are so many inspirational women out there. Kamala Harris, right? Like, who does not find her inspiring right now? But for me, I think it's, I'm inspired every single day by my colleagues, both at the leadership level, but also at the junior level. And I think, often when we think about inspiration, we think it does have to be someone really inspiring, like a Kamala Harris. But, I think it's looking within, and it can happen in small ways. So, I'm challenged every day by my colleagues, and I feel lucky enough and fortunate enough to work with so many inspirational women. And then, oddly enough, I would say, I think early in my career, throughout my career there, I did have a couple of female leaders that were not so inspirational. And in many ways, that is what I think inspired me to hopefully become the leader that I'm trying to be and have been, and to think about, how do you want to inspire others and how do you want to inspire your team? So sometimes it's, what did not inspire you that can lead to inspiration. And I think in terms of what I would tell, my younger self, or a piece of advice I would give to young women, is not to be afraid. I think so many times throughout my career and early on in my career, I was always so worried about, what if I get this wrong? What if I mess this up? What if, I don't do a good job? And it's kind of like riding a bike. You fall and you get back up, you dust yourself off, and don't be afraid, because that's how you're going to learn, and that's how you're going to be able to move forward. And I think, sometimes we think that we have to be good at something, and we always have to, if we don't get it right away, that means we're not good at it. So stick with it, because you might surprise yourself. And just don't be apologetic. I think we talk so much, it's International Women's Day, and I think the only thing that's kind of stopping a woman from achieving her goals is not the gender, but it's the mindset. And so I think, being bold, not being afraid, knowing your self-worth so that you can keep climbing.
Thank you. That's so amazing. I think that these tips and kind of the things you've given us so far are so amazing, and I hope that we continue to encourage ourselves moving forward with the same things. Ashlyn, Elspeth, this question is for you. What's one thing that you'd like to change about the way we either perceive or talk about female leadership or entrepreneurship?
Yes, just one thing. No, I think I would love to move away from this notion that female leadership is some sort of trend we're all watching with wide eyes. It's not a trend. It's it's here to stay, and that's another thing we have to start normalizing, is seeing women in positions of power where we're not all like, oh, this is just so wonderful, this is so unique. And believe me, I can't tell you how thrilled I was when I learned we were having a female vice president, and watching that inauguration I had chills, when I watched that and heard her take that oath. But I just wish it wasn't happening for the first time in 2021. Like it really struck me how late we are to the game in having that moment. And now I know, Vice President Harris, there's so many of them, they're going to do such amazing things politically and beyond, in corporate America too. And I hope that when people see these amazing leaders that we have, they realize, and other women will see them and realize that they have a voice, and they can and they should be using it. And more importantly, I hope the rest of the world hears that voice too. And like I said, we begin to move away from this idea that this is just a trend that we're all watching. And it's something that maybe we'll all come together 10 years from now to celebrate International Women's Day again, and it'll be a different story.
Totally agree with that. I think for me, the thing which really winds me up when we talk about female entrepreneurship is just that labeling it. It's like, we're just entrepreneurs, we're just leaders. And actually, you don't read an article saying, this guy, he's a male entrepreneur, he's a male leader, he's just a leader. And to me, it's all about leveling it up. And the next thing, I know you said I could only have one thing, L'Oreal, but the next thing is then that when you talk about it, it's like, this is a great female entrepreneur and she has 3 children. And again, you never talk about a guy in that way. There might be a paragraph if you're reading something, 8 pages in, which talks about his family, but it never comes up as the first thing. And it's that patronizing tone I just can't bear. I actually don't think it's as much about changing the language about women. It's about changing the language about guys and letting guys be fully rounded, whole individuals as well. So I think it's a balance between the two. That's what I aspire to in the future, for sure.
And I'm going to jump back in and add on to that too, Elspeth, because I think you made an amazing point that, there's a lot of things that when we talk about women in leadership, we wouldn't necessarily have the same conversation if it pertained to a male. Even there's so much, media space given to what women are wearing when they're at events or even at the inauguration, or, Jill Biden and the fact that she's a teacher and was, retaining a job while she was doing that. I don't know why that's, even up for discussion, because it's something so trivial that really is so pejorative when you think about it, and you think these are women that are doing amazing things out there, and we're worried about what kind of shoes they're wearing. How silly. So I hope that that's something we'll be able to move beyond eventually as well.
So great. Ishviene, Elisa, this question is for you. COVID has disproportionately affected women in the workforce. Specifically, women of color have been negatively impacted. Ishviene, you've spoken before about the fallacy of work-life balance, especially centered around working moms. Can you tell us how COVID has impacted you personally, how it shifted your perceived professional life as well?
Oh my God, how has COVID impacted me in so many ways? Okay, I mean, firstly, again, I have so much respect for working mothers. And just to go back to that point that Elspeth just made about, men are not spoken about as like a, father of 3 children. But in many ways, I almost think, how can we not, right? Because the reality is that we're doing 2 jobs essentially, right? And that's why it's so amazing, I think, is like, yes, you are a female entrepreneur, or you are a woman in leadership running that job, but also able to run an entire household. And that kind of brings me to my point about COVID. I think it's brought to the forefront the fact that there are, and this does not apply to every household. I'm sure there are many fathers out there who, pick up the slack and do the same as women. So this is a generalization, but I think there's still so much disparity between the responsibility of a working mother versus, a working father. And that's so true during COVID. It's definitely impacted me personally. I actually ended up with COVID early in March, and I was sick for 30 days. So my husband certainly had to pick up the slack. And I think, it took me getting COVID and having to quarantine for 30 days for my husband to finally say, oh my God, I get it. I understand what you go through now. I don't know how you've been working all this time and managing the household and the kids. And so I think, we're all doing our day job, which doesn't stop, right? But then we also have the kids and then the homeschooling. And how do you explain to your, 5-year-old that when you're working, they can't disturb you? So I don't really believe in the work-life balance. I think it's not a balance. It's difficult. And, the pandemic has certainly made sure of that. So I think it's a lot more about integration, and it's about having an organization that supports you through that integration. I mean, I feel very fortunate. Again, that's why my colleagues are so inspirational to me, because, when I was sick, my entire team picked up the slack. I was able to take the time to be unwell because I had an amazing team behind me to say, you're sick, we can handle this. And so I think it's having a supportive organization, that understands those challenges. And I think also it's about taking the time that you need. I mean, we don't get a lot of time. We know that because, if you're spending time through the day with your kid, you've got to get back online at work during the nighttime. But I think it's whether it's like that 20 minutes in the morning, right? To meditate, do yoga, even if it's like pouring your cup of coffee and just giving yourself those few minutes to be alone and think and process, or it's pouring yourself a glass of wine at night. I think you need to do that in order to like manage and handle the integration of working from home now.
Yeah, Ishviene, I mean, I just completely agree with every point you've made. I think a silver lining, if there is one, to this madness and us living through this global pandemic has been that it's really shown the importance and success of flexible working arrangements, right? I think that used to be such a negative word, and now we're really changing things in the way that we're viewing what our employees need, and having this kind of window, literally our WebEx or Zoom window into their homes has really opened, I think, everyone's eyes to how we can balance this relationship between our work lives and our home lives. And further to that point, I think when, way back when we were all in the office, it was very easy to separate, I think, or I guess not see your colleagues in that way. And now, it's really exposed. We've all kind of exposed ourselves, like we are all indeed human beings kind of going through this experience together. And, we, all of us have obligations and responsibilities in our personal lives, and you really can't hide that anymore, right? It's just right in front of you. And, further to Ishviene's point, this kind of disproportionate weight between, childcare and household responsibilities that, many women, have, borne the brunt for many years, that's been exposed. But at the same time, I can speak on a personal level. Having my husband at home with me has really somewhat, not completely, equalized that a bit. He is available in a way that he never was before. He is incredibly engaged with our kids, which he's just loved, and again, a more deep way than he ever was before. And he's unloading the dishwasher as we speak right now, for example, and doing the laundry. I don't think he really had ever done that before, but he's home and he wants to be involved. And we've had a much truer partnership throughout this that I hope we can keep intact to some degree when things kind of go back to normal. And I would just say, lastly, I really hope that our society and businesses take advantage and embrace this rare and hopefully once in a lifetime opportunity to really like redesign how we think about the future of work, right? Like there's so many possibilities, and there's no one size fits all, and every organization is going to be different. But I just hope we can be more inclusive and considerate towards working parents, and it's not that career trade-off, as we spoke about earlier in this session.
Amazing. We have a couple more questions. Before we jump into them, I did want to remind everyone that if you would like to submit any questions, you can do so by submitting them through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and they will be coming to us so that we can ask the panel. This next question is open to anyone. All of you are very respected women in your industry with successful careers. What's next from a personal or professional area for you?
That's such a great question. I think back to my New Year's resolution, and I'm a member of Chief, and Chief is a great sort of a network for women across different industries. And it's interesting, we were talking about New Year's resolutions or goals for the year, and I think literally everyone said something similar, which was more time for myself to focus on passion projects or things that are focused on building myself up. Because I think the pandemic, like you're giving everything to like work and children and whatever it might be, it's like that me time. And so what's next for me is, I would say, I've been working pretty hard to try and create headspace, but also to be forgiving of myself to pursue a passion project. I'd love to write a book. I'd like to get even more involved in a nonprofit, and I'm involved in a few right now, but I'd love to dedicate even more time to that. And to Elspeth's point, I think the opportunity we have in financial services is so big right now. I think women have more buying power. And so I've been looking at opportunities to focus on the intersection of gender, economic empowerment, and hopefully what I do, which is more of the marketing communications field. So very much looking forward to spending more time on that in the coming years.
Great. Would anyone else like to answer that before we jump into some of the Q&A provided by the audience?
Happy to. My view was my next is getting my children back to school this week because the schools have opened up. That's very definitely the next. And then beyond that, it's just continuing to learn and grow and challenge and just keep pushing, keep going for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so this came from our audience. And again, this is open to anyone who wants to answer. So it's, what can companies do to keep working moms in the workplace, especially once we return post-COVID?
I can answer that. I think it goes back to some of the points that I made earlier, L'Oreal, and it is so important to feel supported, especially, when you do have children at home. And I do think the situation has changed. So I think first and foremost, it's being over communicative with whatever processes the organization has in place. And again, everyone has different needs, right? One working mom's needs is going to be different from another working mother, or even just people within the organization. So I think understanding what those challenges are and being more open, I think if COVID's taught us anything, it's that you don't have to be in the office every day, right? And you can be remote. So understanding that, maybe a certain working mother needs to come in a little bit later or leave a little bit earlier, or it might be that, they need to work from home a couple days a week. So I think we've learned so much about flexibility and ways that organizations can be more supportive. So I think just keeping that, dialogue open from a communications perspective and being more open-minded and understanding that everyone's going to have, a unique challenge.
And I think to that point too, Ishviene, and even you can look at that beyond the plight of working moms too. I think, women, working women may have, even if you don't have kids, you might be dealing with something else at home. And I think that this whole pandemic has taught us so much about, like, don't ever make any assumptions. We never know what others are dealing with, either at home or in work. We might have someone that's taking care of their elderly parents or anything, and it runs the gamut, right? And we have to be really more understanding that, and I think this is where, companies can really play a huge role in being understanding that, of course, we're here to give our all, and we all do 110% at work too, but we have lives beyond that as well. And I know my company Berkadia has been amazing at, respecting and really seeing people as people is what we really go by there. My boss always kind of takes the time before we always catch up, and she'll always say, "How are you?" Before we get in, "How are you doing?" And just sometimes asking that question is like, do I really want to unload on her right now? Or, where do I go with that? But I think really seeing people as people and understanding we're all dealing with so much more than, this, press release I happen to be writing right now. It is huge. And companies, I think, can really, they're going to see a lot of that going forward about how important it is to see people like that.
Yeah, and just one quick, I completely agree. One quick thing to add is I think you need to advocate for yourself, and until you ask if something's possible, it's not going to happen. So I would suggest really taking this time and this opportunity, this unique opportunity that we all have to kind of think about what's going to work for you and your family and your company. And in your career, and put it out on the table and ask for it. This is the time to do that.
Awesome. So our next question is, as women working in the financial services industry, often the room is full of men. What are your tips for making an impact and being seen and heard as unique individuals?
I'm happy to take that one. I have been in that room many, many times. And I would say, I think there is sometimes this feeling like I am being talked over. So I am speaking, but I'm either being talked over or interrupted. And, in some ways, unapologetically, you can say, "Let me finish my thought," or "I still have something to say about this." Because sometimes in those meetings, if you're like outnumbered 9-1, it sometimes feels like, all right, well, I guess I'm not going to say anything then, or I'm just going to shut up and sit back. But, choose to challenge, right? It's our opportunity to say, "Hey, I was actually, in the middle of a thought. So let me just finish what I wanted to say," or feeling empowered to challenge the group, because sometimes groupthink is a real thing. You can come into a meeting and be like, "Why is this conversation veering in this direction?" And I always say, trust your instincts. I think we have to celebrate that we as women, we do bring a different perspective. I think every perspective is really important and different. And there is a lot of danger in groupthink that if everyone around the table looks very, very similar, then we're probably not having a diverse enough conversation. And so diversity and perspective is super important. And sometimes if you're the only woman in the room, we kind of carry a responsibility to challenge groupthink. And it's really hard to do that if everybody's talking very loudly and over you and interrupting you. But we sort of have to fight for that voice and that moment and that opportunity, and sometimes kick people under the table, as I say. So I would say I do encourage women, if you ever are in that in that type of an environment, you know, don't let everybody interrupt you or talk over you. It's hard, but you know, we sort of have to do it.
I would also say, know your worth too, and don't be ever afraid of coming off as sounding cocky or arrogant because you happen to be the person at the table with the most subject matter expertise. I don't think there's anything shameful or wrong about piping up, especially for women in marketing and communications as well. You know, sometimes you might be sitting somewhere and you might think, I've often been in a room where I think, oh gosh, I don't know how that's going to go down if we play it out that way, or what the reaction might be. And I'm like, why am I having this conversation with myself in my head? I'm just going to speak up and say it out loud because that's what I'm here to do. And I know I'm good at that, and I have to feel confident with that. And that's, again, not a matter of being cocky or arrogant. It's knowing where you stand and knowing that, you know, I've worked my butt off to get where I am, and I know I'm good at it. So I'm going to share that insight with everyone now.
I love that. Early on in my career, someone said, literally take up space, so that you train yourself to take up space in the room, which I always thought was a really good tip.
L'Oreal, there's a very British tip which goes with that, which is don't pour the tea when you're in a meeting room as well. So there's a very British tip, which is when everyone comes in, don't be the person who hops up and offers everyone else a drink. Let someone else do it as well. That goes with it.
That is a good tip. So to follow up, what can men in the industry help to create a more inclusive workplace for us?
I think listening is really important. You know, I think there's sometimes this rush to like, I need to do stuff, and I think action is really important. But you know, sometimes there is, you know, I think as women are speaking up and sharing their experiences and talking about it, sometimes what we're asking, you know, our allies to do, our male counterparts to do, isn't like, okay, I need you to go run off and fix everything tomorrow. Sometimes listening is such a critical first step, and being able to at least listen, acknowledge the experience, and say, okay, I hear you. It's so important. And that's it's a kind of like a good and important first step. And I can't underestimate the power of listening in any situation, but the ability to sit and go, okay, I might not agree with you at first blush, or that's not what I meant to say. And I realized maybe I said something hurtful, and you acknowledged, or you felt that way, but that's not what I intended. But to listen, because I think it's so important that as women are hopefully choosing to challenge more and more on the flip side, you know, the more active listening I think our male counterparts can do, the more we can start to move things forward, you know. So I would say shut up and listen sometimes it's a really good thing to do.
I would just add to that, Binna, by saying, be an advocate, right? It's not just about, you know, following the crowd or being told what to do, but like, what can you as a male do to, you know, improve the situation, or how can you help, or like what action can you be taking? Like I mean, this webinar is a perfect example, but of course it's International Women's Day. But even when I think about when we host, like, you know, Vested hosted a really wonderful, you know, women's panel about a year ago. And it wasn't meant to just, you know, have women in the audience. We wanted men there, and that's so important. So I think being a part of the change, being a part of the conversation, not making assumptions. I think way too often men make certain assumptions about women, or we get victimized. And so I think really thinking about that, you know, is going to actually help improve the situation a lot.
That's great. A few of you commented that often it's women entrepreneurs or women leaders. How do you think as PR professionals, as communicators, we can shift the narrative from it being women doing something to it being something that's been accomplished by a woman?
I think that's just thinking about, I think people like to label and put things in boxes. It's the easiest thing in the world to do it and be surprised by it. It will just come in time as people talk about the accomplishments. Instead, focus on what the outcome is. Don't focus on the individual and where they come from. And so we don't think about the colour of their skin. We don't think about the gender. Just talk about what they're achieving, and the rest can come through with it. So to me, it's about actually cutting the words rather than adding more words to the conversation.
Yeah, I think Ashlyn made this point. I think in some ways, as PR people, while we can like finesse the words, there is a degree of like normalization that has to happen society wide. So it's not just about maybe the choice that we put in the press release, but how people perceive people. And to Elspeth's point, moving beyond, the reason why we call out, gender, ethnicity, or whatever box we choose to label ourselves in, it's because it's our way of saying, look, let's celebrate this person who has accomplished all these things in spite of what may have been many different obstacles they face in their career because of the box that they have sometimes sat in or been forced to sit in. And I hope that, to Ashlyn's point, in the years to come, that as that normalizes, the same way we don't go male CEO or male founder or, blank, whatever it is, that those descriptors change and that we don't feel that we have to say, I'm a female founder, I am just a founder, but that's going to take a lot of work and normalization and probably time as well, unfortunately. But I'm hopeful that, as change accelerates, that day will come sooner rather than later.
Great. So what is your advice for the next generation of women leaders? What do you hope changes in regards to women in the workplace and in financial services?
One of the things that I hope changes is, not to go back to the working mom, but I think the reason that we have this huge disparity and why we still don't have a lot of women in leadership roles is because there comes a point where women feel that they have to choose. And so I'd really like to see us close that gap a lot more, where women realize, they can be a mother and they can still go on to have a successful career, and they can, continue to reach a leadership position, and that they don't have to make that choice. Because I think too often that's what happens, is people just feel like, they're at a crossroad and they can no longer continue. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, again, as we talked about, with organizations being more supportive, so that women don't have to make that choice, and that they can continue with their passion, and they can continue to have really, really successful careers and be impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just adding on that, and I spoke to this earlier, but this, embracing this flexible working arrangement is so important for working mothers, especially with young kids. And if organizations can become more comfortable with that and enable their employees to have that flexibility, whether it be in, their hours in the office or working from home, we can really retain young mothers in a whole new way, and organizations will, only benefit from that. And, women who maybe dropped out of the workforce or just couldn't accelerate will, become leaders. And that's really, what my hope is, again, from all of this, that we can make that change.
I hope too that we as women can really, like I kind of said earlier, going back to knowing your own worth, not only just know it, but continue to invest in yourself, I think is huge too. And if you can, be at a company that maybe gives tuition reimbursement or something like that, so you can continue to go forward with your education. And even if it's not education or professional development, if it's just taking a moment and stopping and realizing, no matter what point I'm at in my career, you're always going to have someone to learn from. That's actually a thing I love about my team. is, you know, we all learn from each other, and it's not, I can ask questions of anyone and say, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to walk me through this one more time. And nobody's like, oh, she's my boss, she should probably know this. But, you know, we all have to kind of learn from each other if we're going to continue to support each other as well, and continue to nurture that growth and give women that kind of safe place where they're not ashamed to ask questions or they're not embarrassed. That's one thing I always want my team to know. And even at the risk of making myself look like an idiot, I'll always say, you know, ask the questions. It doesn't matter. Keep investing in yourself and keep trying to get better. And, you know, just give yourself something to be really proud of.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd add or probably expand to is I think one thing that I find exciting is that I think we are redefining what leadership is, you know, and I think historically, because, you know, men have occupied more roles of leadership, leadership was typically defined in more masculine terms. I would say, you know, tough, you know, no nonsense. And I think what I'm excited about, and I think the work that we're still doing, is redefining leadership in the context of the leadership qualities that we can bring to the table as women, right? That we don't have to be the tough one to be a leader, but we lead with empathy, because, you know, I think someone made the point that, you know, women tend to bring more EQ into their leadership style. And I think that's exciting, because I think we shouldn't be forced to be someone we're not because we have to fit a historical mold of what being a leader looks like. Actually, we all are leaders, and we're defining leadership in the context of having more diverse people occupy these roles. And so a particular type of CEO might not just be, oh, it's because she's a female CEO that no, this is just a great leadership style that she brings. Maybe it's because she's a woman, or it's just because this is leadership that we need right now. And so I think it's so important that it goes with the idea of normalization, but I think the more we can start to expand our definitions of leadership, of being a great executive, I think it's actually better for everyone. So I'm personally very excited about the change that's happening there.
Totally. I was just going to finish us up. I was thinking exactly the same thing. My view in terms of hope is that people continue to believe, that they continue to challenge, but also that they continue to care. And I think that's where that redefinition comes. It's bringing those together, and that's what gives me great hope for the future. It's very exciting.
Wonderful. I wanted to thank you all for participating today. Ishviene, Ashlyn, Elisa, Binna, Elspeth, it has been wonderful to hear from you. I'm inspired as a woman still early in my career, and inspired to see kind of all the phenomenal women that will follow from this wonderful advice. Thank you all for attending. The video will be on the Vested blog later. And we will share it around for anyone who didn't get to listen to the full session.